Hey, it's Dame. I did one final afterthought to give you a little idea of they called her the bad habit at AtticA prison, the nun that was in charge. Watch American Horror Story, the one where they're in the asylum one. Okay. Now, she was the head chaplain in charge of all the religions. That's an imam for the Muslims, reverend for the Baptist, Protestant, and her for the Catholics, and she was in charge of all that. And that's a big job. You're making over 100. And with the nuns, like my friend Sister Carmen, she's a teacher her whole life. She taught, and she never saw her paycheck. She was given room and board. They didn't pay her ever. So she worked full time, and she said, for my master's degree in math, I was told to clean the priest's toilet at the rectory. She's like, I'm still on my hands and knees scrubbing toilets within education. So, that was common. And the lady that was the head chaplain in AtticA, the bad habit, she was like that lady. And everybody thought she was real good looking, because she wasn't like an old haggard, 70-year-old. She was pretty young, and she looked real young, real good. And she would go do the polka and go out for Dingus Day and stuff. And they thought she was wild. She wasn't scared in there at all. She wasn't scared. And, she's going up to cells in the box in the SHU, Special Housing Unit, with people that are eating their own feces. They're seeing everything. They're on every drug trial there is. And she's talking to them to try to talk to them to get them to come out before the guards go in and bum rush them and, pull them out and put them in a Barney Rebel suit. That's like a insane asylum suit that is like padded, and they tie your arms up like a straitjacket sort of type of thing. Your arms are loose, I think, and then they just put you in a room with clear plexiglass on the front, just white walls and a floor with a drain, and basically I think that's it. I don't even know if you get a mattress. You just lay there, but that's under obzo, they call it, I think, and that can go for a good 3 days or something. So anyway, she did, she went to those places and talked to these people, and they're saying, it's like The Exorcist on some of these dudes. These people at AtticA prison are convicted of the most heinous crimes in American history. I worked the sex offender crimes and the investigations on employees and cases that were up for civil commitments, which is lifetime incarceration under medical observation care until they deem that you're okay to get out. Like not Lee Harvey Oswald, Hinckley, that was attempted to assassinate Reagan, was like in a place like that. But New York civil commitments it was up for review when you finished your sentence, and they would say, were you still a threat to society? And that would be decided in my desk. I never had a no. There was never any person that ever was wrong at all. It should have been longer sentences right from the get-go. So she's a tough old bird, this one here, and she's not around the mother house, or she might go to the mother house in Buffalo, but the school at Notre Dame where my friends, the nuns, were, that I packed up the 12 rooms, cleaned the mattresses, cleaned the kitchen, cleaned the living room, their little prayer thing, vacuuming. I mean, it was enough work for 3 girls, and it was just me and my little girl would just stay in the kitchen with them and like paint pictures or whatever, do little things. They'd show her movies and stuff, And I would be upstairs cleaning it out in the cellar, and they would tell me what they needed done, and I would just go up and do it, and they would sit with her, and I would go do it, because, they couldn't make it even barely up and down the stairs. I think most of them were living on the first floor at that point, but they still felt like the whole upstairs had to be clean. And again, like I said in my previous video, nobody came from Notre Dame. They shared a parking lot. That's Notre Dame High School. No one came over to help them, and the nuns were so scared, like they were getting thrown out, didn't want to move to Buffalo away from their friends. And Sister Carmen worked at the hospital, one of the hospitals, for the better part of, 10 years at least, and, the school before that. So they had a lot of ties to the community, and they were really sad about that. But in truth, Sister Joanne couldn't drive anymore. She was driving around town like, kind of like I'm not going to say the word because the flag would, wild with it, just a little fender bender every third day, when she's pulling out of Faye's parking lot or Rite Aid, whatever it was at the time. So this bad habit. So I'm friends with them, and on the other side at work, I'm like acquaintance with her, because I have to work with her. There was we used to call him the runaway rabbi, and he wasn't going anywhere he was assigned to the prisons that he was assigned to minister at, and he was just pretending to go there. And he didn't go, and it was in the newspaper, and there was a huge investigation, and he'd say, oh, I thought I was supposed to be there, I was here, I was there. There was never anything for him, but he'd sit at my desk, like, telling me, like, oh, I forgot to punch in, this is for months at a time, and just crazy stuff, but I had to work that investigation. I'm the low end of the totem pole. I'm doing all the collecting his time cards, collecting, she's got his boss is the chaplain, so I have to go to her and say, well, when was the last time you actually saw him in the facility? When was the last time anybody identified him at Albion Correctional, the women's prison? It's a hub, and you do certain prisons on certain days that you're supposed to go administer your faith, whatever he does, put people on a kosher list, whatever he's supposed to do. I don't even know. But he wasn't any place. He was just collecting a paycheck. And most of the time he was downstate, down near Fallsburg, New York, South Fallsburg. That's heavily populated with a community of people that he could be back and forth, in a day. So he could always get back if he needed to, but, it was pretty far away, pretty isolated for any emergency. It'd take a couple hours at least. So in that, during that time, I'm working also gang investigations, and the T word rhymes with bearerism. People, we have the first guys that did the World Trade Center bombings before 9/11. That guy was in AtticA prison, and he was on a mail watch. I worked the mail watches too, and I had to make the copies of the letters and stuff like that. And he got a call that he could make a phone call, long distance phone call, and the imam had this sister, the bad habit. She said he could make the call from her desk. So he's been convicted of that crime, and he's making a call from her desk. And she doesn't ask anybody if it's okay. She doesn't call the chart office. She doesn't call anybody. The phone records come in that there was a half an hour conversation from her desk to, I think it was Yemen, but I could be wrong, somewhere over there in that neck of the woods, by a guy convicted of that, and no one speaks the language, and there was no interpreter. And when asked what he was talking about, and she said it was just family business, someone died, or someone was coming to visit, or whatever it was. But how would we ever know? And that's coming out of, she's trying to do the right thing, I guess, because it's, she feels that's the thing to do. Or is it? Or is it? Who's reopening all the churches? What are they turning to in different areas? I'm not sure. But before you let anybody get you riled up against people for any kind of religious reasons, I would look at what Jesus did, flipping tables, and say that God wasn't in those. It wasn't about those things, because nobody should get a half an hour call overseas to people that have declared themselves enemy of the state. That's just my thought on that. And that she wasn't there to help clean up anything either. Nobody was. Nobody was there. So for it to fall, but don't let everything rebrand and all the books from the libraries on the East Coast went to Newbern, North Carolina. That's where they all went. So you got new copies of all the books for those people. So be careful. Christ is within you. Christos is within you. Live that way. And the only thing you have is your righteousness, and not in the way of like, oh, I'm righteous. I mean, making the right choice when you can. Every time God gives you a chance for that, then you do that. And if you don't, then you will suffer the consequences, in my opinion. This lady, this friend of mine that everybody knew, I took her everywhere, and to hear she gaslit me like I was nobody, and that no one remembered my grandmother and no one remembered my grandfather. And it's heartbreaking because they did so much and they loved everybody, so they couldn't do enough for people. There wasn't enough money to go around with what they had in mind to do. My grandfather made sure that in urban renewal they wanted to kick out all the brown people that were in the buildings that they were in, just hovels, tenements in the downtown. And yeah, it's sad about Main Streets, but they don't talk about that they were giving people nowhere to live, just knocking down the buildings and leaving them in the streets. And then he came up, they made a thing so they could build a place called Birchwood Village, which was like projects, but they're still standing. And he said, the whole town would say like urban renewal, like it was a swear word to him, like he had something to do with it. No, he didn't. He made sure they had a place for people to go when they kicked him out in the street and tore down the buildings and didn't care that those people had nowhere, no food. They didn't even have electricity. We would see babies sitting in water with a cord from the baby in a diaper, a dirty little diaper, and the cord would go across the hall. I remember that in some of those hovels that we went to. And you'd be afraid to pick the baby up out of the water. You couldn't believe the baby was the baby protected by Jesus. Of course he was. But did you want to pick up the baby because it looked like it could be lit up? My grandfather lost his mind. A lot of times he would just cry and pray in the car after we'd leave a place. He'd keep it together in front of the people and he'd have a quick little cry prayer session. So then to go there and see these people that I always thought, if my mother was a praying Indian and if she would have prayed harder and my grandma would have gone to church and if they would have come with me when I went on those buses to all those Bible studies down in Florida, down in the old South revivals, maybe my mother would have found Jesus. But that's not what they're really selling there. They're selling you ways to get in your head and not tell you how to get off your knees. Get off your knees and say thank you for everything you have every day. And never pile on people. It was so easy to pile on me a lot, and it made me stronger. I'm happy for it. But be the person that people came to me to ask for help with their stuff, and that put me in a position of power because sticking up for somebody else made me more strong in my own things of what I would stick up for. And you can do that in your daily life, on anything, at work, at anywhere you're at. Just take up for yourself because nobody else will, and they will gaslight you and tell you. You know, I've got things from the head librarian about, okay, Damia, here's what I found in the 3 hours I researched your family, which is like extensive. It's so extensive. There's so many printed things, and it was so disrespectful, and like I was bothering her, the historian, and it's the rich history of that town. It's a beautiful history of that town. But you see, there was a fire with the records, back in the day and all that. And there was the city deal that my stepmother and cousins, went and filed. And they're all in it together. They're always in it, always together. And it's easy from here now that I'm on the other side of the world to tell you about. So you don't feel nuts with it. Because everything I've got has got newspaper articles, TV shows, books. I can show you, and I've got the receipts to show it to you, and it's true, and I want to help you see the truth of it and how it's all the same at the top, and don't let them separate you. It's all the same at the top, and they don't want any of us to do well. It's just a power grab. So grow your food and save your seeds and figure out what you're going to do with you every day. That's my best advice. All right. God bless.